Before the 19th century, there were no diplomatic relations between China and the West, primarily due to two reasons. First, from an economic perspective, China, with its vast territory and abundant resources, was predominantly a self-sufficient agrarian economy. The central government largely disregarded international trade, viewing external commerce merely as a conciliatory policy to bestow favors on distant people. From the end of the Tang dynasty to the Southern Song dynasty, overland connections between China and the West had been severed for more than 400 years. The Mongols' westward conquests were more focused on plunder than on bringing Western culture to China. The Mongol cavalry's conquests, led by Genghis Khan, initially revived the Silk Road by establishing a vast empire that ensured peace and stability across Eurasia. However, the later fragmentation of the Mongol Empire, with the emergence of separate khanates, led to the decline of the Silk Road. The subsequent Ming dynasty, under Zhou Yuanzhang, faced setbacks like the heavy losses at Healing, leading to a defensive stance that further diminished the Silk Road's importance. The rise of the Qing dynasty didn't improve the situation, as Mongol tribes like the Dzungar Khanate continued to destabilize the region, hindering the revival of overland trade between East and West. Consequently, trade between China and the West had to navigate around the southern tip of Africa via the Cape of Good Hope, making journeys from London to Guangzhou take at least 3 months. This geographical challenge significantly limited the development of trade. Secondly, on the political front, China perceived itself as the celestial empire, the suzerain state, viewing foreign nations as barbarians, vassal states. The prevailing belief was that foreigners came to China out of admiration and to offer tribute as vassals. At that time, China did not recognize the concept of equal status among nations. Westerners coming to China were expected to acknowledge China as the superior state and themselves as tributaries. The Chinese held the view that there was no need to engage with foreign states, lacking a concept of diplomacy as understood today. Their foreign policy alternated between subjugating or pacifying these barbarian states. The theory and practice of the tributary system reflected ancient China's worldview of being the central kingdom under heaven. This significantly constrained the possibility of equal diplomatic relations between the Chinese dynasties and the Western world. During the Ming dynasty, a prevailing mindset among the Chinese monarchs was encapsulated in the statement, "China governs the interior to control the barbarians. The barbarians on the outside serve China." This reflects a narrow sense of Han Chinese supremacy. The dynasty fortified its borders with numerous checkpoints, indicating a defensive rather than an expansionist approach. Although the Ming dynasty did attempt to diplomatically engage with Southeast Asian countries, it maintained a cautious stance. This caution turned into a more restrictive policy following the troubles with Japanese pirates. Wokou? The Ming government implemented a maritime ban, prohibiting external trade and essentially adopting an isolationist stance. For over 1,000 years, maritime trade was seen as a source of wealth in China, but by the Ming era, it was perceived as a calamity. Throughout the Ming dynasty, the maritime ban was strictly enforced, marking a period of significant isolation. China entered an era of closed borders, believing that contact with foreign nations brought more harm than good, to the extent of deeming it entirely disadvantageous. Since the late 15th century, European maritime technology had advanced significantly, with many governments, particularly that of Portugal, actively encouraging nautical endeavors. Beginning in 1514, Portuguese traders repeatedly visited Tuen Mun in Guangdong, now part of Hong Kong and Shenzhen, where they conducted profitable trade. The number of Portuguese visiting China increased over time, with many settling in places like Macau, Quanzhou, and Ningbo. However, Portuguese efforts to establish formal trade agreements with the Ming dynasty were unsuccessful, leading to the forceful expulsion of Portuguese traders from all locations except Macau. In 1557, Portugal established official administration and defense in Macau, treating it as a colony, which the Ming government tacitly accepted only demanding land tax from them. In 1567, Tu Zimin, the governor of Fujian, requested the lifting of the maritime ban and implemented the ship passport system, which was approved. However, the Ming government only opened Yugang and Zhengzhou, Fujian, as a single trading port for international commerce. By the mid-16th century, explorers and merchants from Spain, the Netherlands, and England successively arrived in China and were permitted to engage in the spice trade in some coastal areas. In the year of 1600, the English government granted a group of merchants a charter to conduct trade in the East Indies, leading to the establishment of the British East India Company. However, these foreign traders were not warmly received by the Chinese. Often perceived as uncouth and solely profit-driven, these foreign merchants reinforced the Chinese view of Westerners as barbarians from beyond the pale of civilization.